Well, basically, most photographers have no idea when it comes to taxes. They're just doing it like their normal, like personal taxes. So I wanted to talk about specifically like what's the difference between sole proprietor and like having an LLC, and when they should consider getting an LLC, and what are the
I,
tax benefits.
I generally say that once you are clearing over like 20,000 net profit per year, that you need to switch to an LLC and elect S corp status. And I think it's probably even more important now under the new tax law because you can deduct, um, you get a free tax deduction of 20% of your net income if you're a flow through entity and you have W-2 wages. So basically that means you just have to pay yourself a portion of your profit out as a W-2, and then you get a free 20% tax deduction under the new tax law that took effect January 1st, 18.
Nice. You can talk, babe. It's okay.
So, and is that going to be that 20%? Is that going to be on top of, didn't the automatic deduction go to like 12K?
That's on your personal return. So
Okay.
it would be on top of the $12,000 standard deduction.
Okay.
Okay, awesome.
So if your business, say if you netted, we'll just use 50,000. Say your net profit was 50,000, and you paid yourself a $12,000 paycheck. So your LLC net profit was 38,000. You would get a $7,600 deduction as well on just for basically a free tax deduction under the new tax law.
Okay, so having an LLC is a good idea for anybody who's making over 20,000.
Yes, and the reason I use 20,000 is that it's going to add additional administrative costs to do payroll, additional tax returns, keep your LLC in good standing depending on what state you're in. So if you're just starting out, or if it's just kind of a hobby, I'd probably just keep it as a Schedule C. But if you're moving into full time and you're going to clear 20 plus, 50 plus, 100 plus, you definitely need to probably look at restructuring.
Okay. Awesome. So the tax benefits, obviously you said were like in a 20% of that?
Well, whatever your net profit under the new law, whatever your net profit is, basically there's a free deduction of 20% of whatever your net is.
What are the benefits in terms of basically Social Security and Medicaid, and how you're basically going to have to pay those as a sole proprietor off the top, as opposed to whenever you have an LLC, you're going to be paying that on what's left?
Well, I don't think you worded that right, but as a Schedule C, you pay Social Security on 100% of whatever your net profit is.
So is that a sole proprietor, a Schedule C?
Yes.
Okay.
Sole proprietor and Schedule C are the same.
Okay.
Same thing. So if you make 50,000, you're going to pay Social Security and Medicare on 100% of that, and as well as regular income tax. And if you structure as an LLC, you will just pay it on whatever you take out as a paycheck.
Okay. Perfect.
So
you're only having
one, it helps manage your cash flow if you have, timing differences. Say a client schedules to come in and they put in a big order and they don't pay until January 1st, and you were really counting on that the prior year, but now it's going to bump up next year's revenue quite a bit or something. It helps you manage what you pay in Social Security to some extent.
Okay.
Perfect.
I think probably a good question to follow up on what we've been on is people asked quarterly versus yearly paying your tax returns. What's your thoughts on that?
It's just kind of personal preference. I mean, that if you're making a lot of income, like I'd say over 50, 60, that 100,000, you probably need to be paying at least a little bit in quarterly. But for sure you need to pay it in by the due date of 4/15. Otherwise, you're going to pay interest until you get it paid. If you do structure as the S corp, you'll have to pay in your payroll taxes quarterly at a minimum.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think that many photographers have payroll, but they do. Another question was, where in QuickBooks do they put like paid models or like makeup and hair artists? Are those under subcontractors, or kind of how would you structure those?
yeah, I would just put them as either subcontractors or outside services, something like that. Or you can make an account for makeup and what was the other thing?
Hair,
Yeah,
hairstyles.
yeah, you could just make an account for hair and makeup.
Okay.
But if you're paying them directly, you probably, unless they're incorporated or an LLC, you probably need to be sending them a 1099 at the end of the year.
And when, is there a certain point at which you would do that? Is there a certain amount that you've paid them, or?
Over $600 per year.
Okay. So if you're paying a single like subcontractor over $600, you send them a 1099.
Yeah, unless they're incorporated or an LLC.
Okay. And then you don't have to if they're in an LLC or incorporated.
Correct.
Okay.
So you do not have to send 1099s to corporations or LLCs that file as a corporation or
Okay.
S corp.
Perfect. What do you feel like are the top 3 mistakes that most business owners make when it comes to taxes?
Probably the top one is just not keeping track of their expenses or documentation. I think that's probably the top 3 actually, but
All of those. What do you feel like is the best way to actually keep track of it? Is it keeping receipts? Is it keeping QuickBooks? Or is it keeping?
the best way is just to make sure everything runs through like a single credit card and or bank account, and
Okay.
don't pay with stuff for cash, and just use the accounts only for business.
Okay. So have a separate business card and a business account,
Yeah.
and then keep
And
track.
that way, if the receipt gets lost or anything, you can still use your bank statements to substantiate expenses in an IRS audit.
Okay.
So if you just basically have those printed out, you just have to write on what it was for, essentially, or you don't have
Yes.
the receipt. All you got to do is just write down what the cost was and what it was for. So
Right. Well, I'm sure you use certain vendors that are specific to
Yeah. Use the same ones pretty much over and over again. Yeah.
your industry. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, you mentioned audit, and Damon said that's probably one of the biggest things that everybody fears is being audited. What's it really like?
basically, you just have to provide your bank statements and or credit card, whatever documentation you have to substantiate your deductions that you took, as well as revenue. So
Gotcha.
it's cleaner if it's all like in 1 or 2 accounts and not scattered like in the shoebox. Cliche example.
Or the Ziploc bag.
Yeah.
That might be ours. The receipts all in a Ziploc bag.
they're all organized.
They are organized, but
the best are the Walmart sacks, though.
do you get those coming in in the season?
I've physically seen a shoebox in his office.
Yeah, we get some shoe boxes and Walmart bags. I think we got like a big trash bag one time.
Oh wow.
It was ridiculous. But
That's crazy. Do you recommend using QuickBooks or Intuit or anything like that?
yeah, the online QuickBooks has come a long way. It's a lot better now. It'll link up with your bank account and kind of auto code stuff if it's on a debit card or like a direct debit type expenditure. Depending on how big you are, spreadsheet will work.
Okay.
QuickBooks or Quicken will work too. I don't like Quicken as much, but
Will the QuickBooks pull off of a credit card at this point?
Yes.
Yes, both desktop and online will.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I was thinking that too.
Yeah,
Um,
it'll import all your transactions.
Okay.
I was thinking one of the things that Damon mentioned is he feels like one of the biggest mistakes that he's seen with business owners is that they wait until right now to actually think about their taxes when it's actually too late for the previous year. So, well, you were saying that.
Well, I just think in general, like as you discussed earlier, you're talking about you essentially have a net profit of X or a net profit of Y. At this point, we're in what was
2018.
it's March. So anything that happened in 17, you can't really go back and spend more money. So if you basically, if it looks like on paper that you made 50K, that's what you made. As opposed to photographers, some of the biggest purchases that they're going to have to make are like cameras, lighting equipment, things like that. I just feel like that most people should be having strategy sessions with a CPA or somebody like you or you, quite frankly, in October, November, or December about how they're going to finish out the year, and if there's some things that make sense to offset taxes, as opposed to now when what you did is what you did.
Yeah, it's definitely advantageous or strategic to take a look at where you're at, November 1st, December 1st. And if you're having a really good year and you need some additional equipment or better equipment to make those purchases so that your average tax rate decreases or you stay in a lower bracket or whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe you can also prepay expenses and try to move them up a year.
Yeah.
If
So
you don't need equipment.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you don't need equipment, or you can prepay like bills for the next year in order to take your taxable profit amount and lower it, correct? And that might bump you down into a lower tax bracket.
Yes.
Okay. I think the other thing too is you can't, once you're past the year you're filing taxes, so like for now, if you don't have an LLC and it would be advantageous for you to actually have that, it's kind of too late for 2017, right?
Well, you can still do some retirement plan funding and count it for 2017. You have until the due date of the return, including extensions, to fund like a SEP IRA, which is the max you can fund it is 20% of whatever your net is.
Yeah. But as far as like filing an LLC, it won't count, right?
You could not file an LLC, but even if you're a Schedule C, you can still file a SEP and fund it to get a tax deduction for the prior year. That's retirement plan funding, and if you had an HSA medical plan, it's kind of like a health IRA. Those are about the only types of things you can do after the year ends and still deducted on the prior return.
So let's talk about the LLCs again, because I know this is a question that comes up just for photographers and everybody in general. So basically, you could file an LLC. The way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could file an LLC all the way up until December 31st and apply that to the year. After December 31st, you no longer can apply that to the year.
To file taxes.
To file taxes.
Well, technically, if you're wanting to file one, I would do it sooner.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if you had one filed right now, I'd probably roll the whole year onto it. But if it's later in the year, you really need to split it between your Schedule C and your LLC return.
Okay. So it's actually more important to get an LLC done ASAP when you're starting your business.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Because most people I feel like that are following, they're actually trying to make an income. So it's not necessarily a hobby. So it's definitely probably more important that that's one of their first steps. Perfect. We talked about that. Do you have any other questions?
Oh, there was a question about sales taxes, and I don't remember exactly when it was, but if on your retainer, if you needed to
collect sales
tax, which I think would just be the difference between whether your state, and I don't even know if there is any states. Are there any states that charge a tax on services?
Oklahoma does now.
Do they now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they consider photography a tangible personal property. So even sitting fees, you're supposed to collect sales tax on.
Gotcha. So it depends from state to state, though, correct?
Yes.
So on that retainer, should you be collecting sales tax? Is the question.
I don't think so, because there wouldn't really be a sale. That's just like a deposit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
To
reason
save
why it's
days.
not a deposit is because it's non-refundable.
Yeah, retainer's non-refundable versus a deposit is refundable.
Yeah, but if they no show, you're not really providing them any tangible products. So that's just.
Right.
I don't think there's sales. I would argue there's no sales tax on it.
Yeah. I think if I'm correct, in Vegas, they only have sales tax on physical products. So, and Kat might be able to type in if she knows something different or has heard something different. But so if you do the shoot and you give them digitals, you don't have to collect sales tax. It's only when you give them like a canvas, you sell them a canvas, or you sell them an actual physical like album or something like that, then you collect sales tax on the physical products.
Okay.
But that's what I understand in Nevada, but I think Kira had that question, and so it's going to be dependent upon your state whether you have to what you collect sales tax on.
Most states you can find a sales tax guide on their whatever the state website is. Because I look at Oklahoma's about once a month because somebody has a sales tax question. So I'm sure you can find a sales tax guide for your particular state, and it should define. If there's not a section on photography, I would be surprised. I would think most states would have one in there.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. What other questions do we have?
But back to that. Generally, you're in general, there's no sales tax if it's out of state. So if you charge them a sitting fee, and then they make their order, so to speak, when they're back home in Arizona or whatever, I think you would get around sales tax.
Okay. So if you're a photographer and your client's coming in from out of town and they place the order from their home state, then technically you can get around it. What's really cool is you know a lot more than most people do.
That one's state specific, because some of the states started demanding the sales tax for the state regardless of where it was, and they did that based on wherever the warehouse is located. So if your warehouse, even though they ordered from out of state, your warehouse, which is essentially your photography studio, is what they're basing on whether you should have to pay sales tax. That's basically how the states came back and started getting sales tax when the internet started building up and doing that.
Well, that's if you have nexus in additional states. Yeah. So like Amazon has warehouses all over the country now and employees in all 50 states probably. So they have nexus everywhere. So if somebody just has one location, they don't have nexus in another state.
That's true.
So Kat had a question. She said she's been using Expensify to scan receipts, and she said it's a mess. It's telling me I can't correct items over 30 days old, and she can't seem to figure it out. She said she feels stuck because it has all of her data in it, but she can't cancel to transfer out. Can you print it, Kat? Like, I wonder if you can print all of that. And then you might just
it's just because there's things that aren't corrected. It's got the electronic image, and it's just I can't get it to print because it's stuck in there.
Gotcha.
Can you not save it off as a PDF? I've never looked at that particular program, but
I don't know.
Okay, you had one other, we'll have to look into that. You had one other question. You said you've been using MileIQ for logging miles with GPS. Do you need to record exactly where you're going?
And what I'm going.
What you're going there for?
Well, in the case of mileage logs, the more the better. But when you get in the car, it just automatically starts, or I know there's a bunch of different ones of those mileage apps.
Yeah. So when you
You
get
have
in,
to open the app and
it
start.
automatically alerts you when you get there. You can see it.
Yeah.
It'll show
Okay.
you where you went. You can actually say, you know, that's your house, that's your work, and it'll auto classify if you want it to. So it's
Okay.
really convenient because my watch goes, did you log your trip? You just went so many miles. I'm like, sweet. And you just swipe and you can hold it and say, this was to need a consult or for a consultation, or it was for getting supplies. So I just haven't been saying what it's for. I'm swiping, but
Yeah, it would be better. I mean, if you got audited, the more documentation, the better. So just, yeah, going to the bank, going to the clients, whatever.
okay, cool.
Perfect.
I think this is one that like if you had to choose one thing, like one deduction that you feel like business owners overlook. I know the thing you feel like they don't do is they don't record,
track
they
it.
don't track close enough. But what's one deduction or a couple of deductions that you feel like business owners miss or forget that they could be taking that would make an impact on how many taxes they're having to pay?
A lot of times it's auto. They just track their mileage, but if you use actual expenses, a lot of times it'll maybe not out west, but in Oklahoma with the big trucks and so forth, the actual expenses will come out a lot more than mileage.
Okay.
Because if you drive a big gas guzzler that gets 10 miles to the gallon, your maintenance, fuel, and insurance is going to be more than 53 cents a mile.
Gotcha.
So how you're writing
Now,
up? Oh no. Okay.
I never really thought about that because photographers are not necessarily driving as much as and when I did real estate, I was driving a ton. So there's no
right.
way it would offset, but you're completely right.
Yeah. So on the photography side, I mean, it should be.
Depends on whether they have a studio or whether they go to the client or they go on location or they're traveling to a location to shoot. Like a makeup artist who's a freelancer goes to the client all the time, so she's always traveling. So it would just depend on what your business structure is, because some photographers will go to a hotel to do their boudoir shoots, so they go and rent a place, so they would be traveling too.
Right. And then it comes down to the car, like you said too.
Yeah. So just you would keep all your travel expense, hotel expense, etc. If you're traveling. I mean, and then once you get up to where you're cash flowing pretty good, I mean, a lot of people don't. A big way to get a chunk is to do retirement planning.
Right.
Okay. We might need to.
Or retirement funding.
Right.
So you can put up to almost $60,000 a year into a retirement plan and reduce your taxable income.
And that's per person, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So in a dual income household, you could be putting up to 120,000 away.
And that's way better to take your extra money and put it into retirement versus having to pay it to Uncle Sam.
And if you really want to crank it up, you could do a pension plan and put in $300,000 a year or something.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So you can have a pension plan on a LLC now?
Yeah, you can even do it on a sole prop.
I didn't know that.
The only problem is once you commit to it, you have to commit to a 3-year funding. So
okay,
it's 300 for 3 years, or 50 for 3 years, or 60. The 60,000 I talked about first is just a 401k with profit sharing.
Right.
So you're not stuck into that. You set up the plan, and then if you have the money, you contribute. Or if you have a good year, you contribute. If you have a terrible year, you don't.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna have to do another episode on that.
just on that for sure. Yeah, I agree.
What do you think the advantages of a CPA are? I mean, beyond the workout drinks in there, CPA over TurboTax and old H&R Block down the street and all that jazz.
Well, I just think that they probably know more tax laws or advantages. TurboTax, I mean, the majority of people, it's fine. I see some people make a mess of it every now and then. It's fine if you just have a W-2 and there's really nothing you can get. Although I see people mess up W-2s as well, but every now and then. But definitely, if you're in business, I would not use H&R Block or I mean, TurboTax might be okay if you know what you're doing, but if you don't have any experience, I'd probably look for a CPA or somebody that's at least an EA that's local, or somebody online.
Yeah, I think that most people think they're saving money when they do it themselves. And what they don't realize is that a person who actually specializes in businesses and doing business taxes can actually save them probably more than it's going to cost them to have them do it. Yeah. And because they know what can be deducted and all of those things, and like what advantages there are for businesses versus them just doing it on their own or using TurboTax.
Especially if the person's coming in and having a conversation with you in November and December 1st, as opposed to now when it doesn't matter, where you can walk them through, okay, what happened this year, so on and so forth. Well, you got this much money, really, where can we get rid of it? The other thing that I think is really interesting, and I don't know, maybe you can speak to this, is I have a hard time, but I'm very aggressive on taxes, but I have a hard time understanding how people that are in business and they're paying for everything to run their business, and they're paying for studio space, and they're paying for hair and makeup, and they're paying for all of this stuff, are having such large percentages of net profit left over. I feel like they're either not taking advantage of all the deductions that they could get. Mm-hmm. B, they're not actually planning out and structuring their purchases. Or C, they're just saving all of their money with no eye towards the fact that, if you save that much money, even now you're going to be paying 21-25% to the government.
Yeah, it could be that, I mean, they're not thinking to take like their overhead expenses as a deduction, possibly, if their margin looks really high. I mean, you guys have websites, advertising. I don't know. Do you have licensing? I don't think you have licensing. Really.
Depends on state to state whether you have business licenses. Like in
right.
We don't have state income tax, but we have a state license, we have a city license, and we have a county license.
You got LLC.
Yeah. And you have the LLC.
Yeah, and if you have an LLC, then you would have your state fees, and those vary from state to state. Mm-hmm. So like California is $800 a year, whether you do $1 in revenue or you do $1 million. So.
Yeah, but like, can we let's say you have a studio and you have your hair and makeup artist there and you're doing a shoot and you provide lunch for everybody, or you have snacks and refreshments. Those are all tax deductible, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think those are sometimes things that people don't think about. Or cleaning supplies for your studio.
How much?
Yeah, cleaning supplies, like
every piece of furniture that she's bought, because her studio is it's live work. I mean, every piece of furniture that she's got she bought it for photo shoots. She didn't. I mean, I practically get in trouble for sitting on it. So for photo shoots. So
yeah, so like desks and like computer cables, like anything that has to do with business, correct?
Yeah, editing software. Mm-hmm. I don't know what all, but yeah. Do you have any like those backgrounds? I do a couple photographers here that have
backgrounds. You have lighting equipment. You have I know Kat has like this rolly thing. Oh, she's wardrobe, hair and makeup supplies. Yeah. Shoes. you know, for clients to use and stuff like that. Yeah. I feel like that's probably one of the number one things that most photographers probably struggle with is like, what can I deduct and what can I not deduct?
Yeah.
Is there like a quick and simple rule of thumb that you can give people for that? Because my belief is if you can make a paper trail and you can make a case for the deduction and how it impacted your business, you can deduct it. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the wording is it's ordinary and necessary to run your business. So,
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, yeah, that's probably enough for today on that.
Yeah. So, the next thing I was going to say is how do you find a great business CPA?
I would probably just look at their online reviews or ask around in your business friends that you know in your area. You probably want somebody, you just want to ask, since you guys have sales tax issues, to ask them if they're familiar with sales tax or if they just do income tax.
It seems like so hard. I feel like
just see if you get a good feel. I mean, it's like hiring any other professional, a doctor.
Yeah, but I feel like you have to know the right questions to ask, and I think that's one of the things that I feel like that he's really good at, and you know, but most people just don't even know what to ask. So that also brings me to, you're in Oklahoma, right?
Yes.
But you're licensed to do taxes for anyone in the United States, or is there limited states?
No, I can do tax in any state. I have to get licensed in other states if I'm doing financial audits.
Okay.
But a financial audit's basically what you do whenever you have like contractors that are needing to get in insurance, right?
Yeah, it's for bigger companies or big benefit plans that need some type of third party verification.
But even still, if somebody watches this at this point, I mean, that's something that you can, I mean, I know you've gotten licensed in other states because it made sense for you to do it. And it's not a deal for you to do that.
So you guys have openings for photographers if, you know, if they want to just come to you and come to your office. I know you have a couple, I think you mentioned another guy in your office, John, that can do it. Do you guys have openings for them if they want to use you guys for?
Yes, for the tax side, for like federal and state tax, if applicable, there's no problem. If it's a sales tax question, I would probably have to research it to whatever particular state it's in.
Right.
Because I don't know all the ins and outs of every state. I barely know Oklahoma, so.
Well, it changes constantly, so.
Yeah. Well, I file my sales tax like quarterly.
And how do you do that with because we got people all over the place, and people are going to be seeing this is all over the place. So how would you guys deal with clients? Something like this where it's Zoom, or how does that work with your out-of-state clients? Because I know you got a bunch of out-of-state clients already. So
yeah, typically people just email, fax, or mail me the info.
Okay.
Or if they're on online QuickBooks, they have us hooked up as their accountants, and they just email and say, my taxes are ready, and we just log in and get the info out of their QuickBooks.
Okay.
Gotcha. And you say you do a couple of photographers already. What does it cost to have you do their end of year like taxes?
If they're just a Schedule C, probably about $350.
Mm-hmm.
If you're bigger and you file a separate corporate return and then the personal, it's probably about $650, $700 for both personal and the company.
Okay. Gotcha. Perfect.
And that's tax deductible as well, right?
Yeah, that's a business expense.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Perfect.
And John's the other guy in your office, right?
Yeah, he's a CPA and attorney.
Oh yeah, he's the one that's a tax attorney as well, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Okay. Sweet. And then do you do bookkeeping at all?
My office does. Yeah.
Your office does. Okay. What is that typically for like a smaller photography business, do you think? Like monthly?
I would guess. I mean, if we're gonna do the sales tax and everything, it's probably like 175 a month,
Okay. And without sales tax?
maybe 100. I just have to look at the volume.
Oh, that's way, in my mind, that is way better for
Yeah.
outsourcing because there's a lot of photographers that are,
There's us.
well, yeah, I don't want to do it either, but a lot of photographers get into business because they want to do something that they love and something that they're passionate about, and then they don't realize, shit, I'm now an accountant, I'm a customer service representative, I'm a website, designer, I'm like all of these things, and a lot of times, they don't necessarily enjoy it, or they want to focus more on what they love doing. And so that's one of the things that we talk about is how to outsource those things that you don't really have time to do, and you don't want them to fall through the cracks either. So,
And again, like my personal opinion is, for somebody that's, I mean, at those prices that you're talking about, if somebody's making $20,000 net, or let's just say they're going to have to pay $3,000 in taxes, they would have been way better off to let you do the bookkeeping and reduce that tax burden at the end of the year and have more peace of mind.
well, and have more time to do,
have more time.
spend with their kids or,
Yeah.
their friends or stuff like that. So just taking that off. Yeah. So that's awesome.
Tilt your phone down a little bit, Paul.
Tilt it down.
Yeah.
Or just see your sexy
better.
bald head. That's it. I think that was all the questions that we had. So how would they go about getting in touch with you? You want me just to post like a link or like an email?
Yeah, you can just put my email up there.
Okay. Perfect. And then if you could leave everyone with one tip before we end, what would it be?
Just I would just stress to run everything through one account and stay away from cash receipts.
Okay. Stay away from cash receipts and use one business card or one business account. Perfect.
You know what? Okay. Even though that was the ending, because I know that happens. What is your suggestion for people? Because I know people pay with cash and they pay photographers with cash.
Yeah, just give them an invoice.
Okay.
Write them an invoice.
Yeah. I think a lot of people use Square when they're collecting or Intuit or something like that, and it allows you to invoice it. Yeah. To do a cash transaction, if you will. Okay. Perfect.
Cool.
Kat, Alyssa, let's see, Natalia, you guys have any other questions before we're done? You can type it in the chat box. I think they're actually joining via the phone, and I don't know how well the chat works on the phone. But.
Well, if you have any questions, just put them together and email them to me.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. Sweet. Thanks for joining us and helping us with all these questions. We really appreciate it.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye guys.
All right. Bye.